Welcome to episode 3 of season 1 of the AV Antics podcast, the conversational podcast where two knuckleheads in the AV industry talk about whatever's on our mind and some trends in the AV industry. We're both friends and service professionals in the AV industry and podcasters who have been canceled so far. We have 3 episodes in, Cory. We haven't canceled this yet.
I'm actually genuinely shocked that at the content of the first 2 episodes, that this is something that someone has just said, just keep it going. Just keep doing this thing. So
yeah, let's run it back.
The best part is I feel like once you get to episode 3, maybe episode 4, you're in, right? You can start to push the line a little bit and you're still in. There's still a commitment to the cause. So I think we're all good.
So, Cory, I think to keep it topical at the top of the conversation here, we both saw each other recently at the Chicago E4 event that we hosted. I believe record-breaking attendance for an E4 show, which is quite an accomplishment after doing them for over 10 years now. We got to spend a lot of time together. We worked the booth together. We got to shake a lot of hands, rub a lot of elbows. Cory, how many elbows do you think you rubbed at the show?
An obnoxious amount of elbows. A lot of dry elbows too. Some elbows that definitely need to be lotioned, but a lot of elbows.
What are your highlights from the show? Any big takeaways?
Well, I feel like this particular Chicago E4, and not dissimilar to the other ones, almost seems like a blur. So just for all the running around that I have to do with meetings that I had, it went by so insanely fast. But one of the things I really liked about this, which I don't think has been performed at the other Chicago E4s, not at least that I can remember, is that we had the VIP event the night before. And I would almost say, given the fact that that was a more intimate event, I feel as though you and I had, much more relaxed, but also able to have longer conversations with targeted customers. And I think we uncovered so much just in that 2 hours and opportunities, just discussing in a casual nature with folks that are just coming by, eating appetizers, finger foods, having a drink. And I think that was a great opportunity for us just to interface with people in a manner of which we typically wouldn't when the show actually starts, because when we're talking 35 attendees at the VIP event versus nearly 550 on the showroom floor, it's really tough to have those kind of conversations and commit yourself to having those conversations when customers are coming, going constantly. They want to get to the next booth. They want to see the next thing. You know, our customers come with a commitment to maximize their time. So it was really cool in the VIP event that you and I both collectively just got to have some really good, meaningful conversations with customers that we typically wouldn't be able to do when the show starts.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually had, in the weeks since the event, I think I've had at least 2 follow-up conversations or meetings that have stemmed from people we met at that particular event. There's people who were, like we had to say, wanted to hear more, and they scheduled time with other decision makers at the company to get together and talk about it. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of value in that.
Yeah, one of the things too, interestingly enough, as I reflect on all the E4s that I've done, both with the company and then working for a manufacturer. So I remember the first E4 that I did, the company was relatively small at the time. So it would have been roughly, I'm almost been at Almo for 10 years. So probably 14, 15 years since the very first one that I did. And actually, I think I did the very first one. So it would have been 15 years ago. How much it has changed and grown and evolved over 15 years. I mean, it's actually pretty crazy to see that customers year after year still commit themselves to coming and joining us for these shows. I mean, that is amazing. One, just given the reputation that we have in the industry. So it's nice to see that. But 2, for everything that we put on in terms of the learning, the education, the exhibition piece of it, and just the networking opportunities is pretty incredible that you still get so many people that show up from year to year. So it's awesome to see that the trend continues as far as the engagement goes.
Yeah. One of the takeaway that I had is that, so this is obviously the first E4 that we've done since we've become famous podcasters, and the podcast fans are out. They were there in numbers. They came by the booth. They were happy to share their love. I got a lot of great feedback about the pod. But the one thing that I heard loud and clear, from a lot of people was, we've done 2 podcasts now. We've talked a lot about AV. We've also talked a lot about milk, and the customers have people have really been into the milk content. So I think we're going to keep that rolling. And I think we're going to have our first segment on the show. Most good podcasts have a couple segments to kind of break it up and keep it kind of flowing. And I think we're going to have our first official segment. We're going to call it the Milky Minute. You and I are going to talk about what milk we're drinking, Cory. Mm-hmm. So I got my milk right here. What are you drinking today?
This is ultra pasteurized whole milk. The same whole milk that I give to my daughter on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And that I also put into my cereal. I am a huge, I grew up on skim milk because I have crazy people for parents. And
sure.
It was like my mom's whole thing was this, okay, let's make sure that we're leaving and reducing as much of the calories in this milk as possible. And I really only knew skim milk. I knew that I hated it because I just could say, hey, this is just a water substitute, essentially. It's just white water.
Sugar, too, way too much sugar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's silly not to get the inherent good qualities and nutrients from a good whole milk. So over time, I have in this learning and exploring process of different milk products that I fancy myself a whole milk drinker now. Just in with dipping cookies, with cereal, or if I just want to have just a nice room temperature glass of milk, I'm going whole.
Yeah, so I'm a 2% guy. So I got a Kroger 2%. This is a good year. It's expiration date May 14th. So it's right at the sweet spot. Yeah. Still pretty healthy. The kids have been using for cereal. Had a similar milk journey. I was always a 2% man. But my wife was a skim milk girl. So when we first got married, we had to go back and forth, like skim, 2%, skim 2%. We lived on 1% for a while. I think over time, she kind of saw the inherent value in getting away from like the sugary milk water. And then after about 10 years, I kind of wore down, and now we're firmly a 2% family. And I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, it's interesting how you have a house divided and then compromised on 1%, and then just through your power of persuasion, managed to over time reintroduce on a regular basis the 2%, which is great.
And this may be gilding the lily a little bit, but also it goes great with milk duds. So I'm going to wash down my 2%, my milk duds with a little 2% milk. I'm feeling pretty good about
it. You are a milk dud. Oh yeah. So cheers to our Milky Minute.
That's right.
The very first one. Yeah, I was also thinking about too, just in this time window, and if you noticed, obviously from the first two episodes, I had changed the color of my background, and I did so for McLaren. Had to do it for McLaren. The orange was a little too washed out, but they do have blue in their color. The first practice session of the Miami Grand Prix weekend has just concluded, and I'm itching to watch it. So I'm really excited for the race coming up, and I'm glad that you're also watching F1 as well now too. So I have someone to talk about it with.
I think one of the things that as I've watched F1 now for whatever 4 or 5 races this season, I was surprised at how much I enjoy watching qualification. I guess I would have thought that would have been kind of boring and underwhelming, but like figuring out who's going to be the top and like how important that is very interesting.
Yeah. So what's kind of funny is like as you get more acclimated to it. When I went to the race a couple years ago in Austin, Texas, I found myself, and I had already done this. I think. To me, qualifying is as equally as fun as the race. So those are really the two main events that people turn out for. Now, I showed up to every practice. I showed up to the pit lane walk the night before. I mean, really did everything throughout the weekend. But really, if you're just looking at it from a grandstand perspective, quali is always completely full. Race day is always completely full. And they're just by far the two most exciting things to watch, because I think the reason qualifying is so fun to watch is because the car is pushed to its absolute performance max, right? They have low fuel levels to keep the car light, and they're maximizing the power around the corners, around every turn, darting into every single corner, where in the race, they may race a little bit more conservatively, right? There's things as far as like making sure that you're doing proper tire management, all that. Quality, all that stuff, all that strategy is off the table. It's just go as fast as you can, as hard as you can for so many laps to get to the top.
Well, that, and you take away a lot of the variables too, because you're not racing against people. You're not having to take a wide turn or take a different angle because someone's in your way.
Unless someone is in fact impeding you during quali, which does happen, Lance Stroll.
But I guess the important thing is like you plan, you prep, you prepare, you get your car ready, and you have a chance to run your best, fastest lap without with taking away a lot of the variables that happen on a race day, which is cool to watch.
It's really fun to watch.
Which, Cory, I think that transitions nicely into a topic that we want to talk about today, which is preparation, which is the importance of preparing and the importance of being ready for an AV job, and particularly with us being in the services I guess, view of the AV project, kind of how customers prepare for subcontracting the work that we do and how it impacts the outcomes of a project.
Yeah, and what's interesting about just even having this discussion now is the timing of it, right? We're right in the beginning of May. I don't know when this is going to be live, but I anticipate probably somewhere towards the end of the month, which is going to be right into what is mostly the busy season for every integration company, right? For various reasons, whether you're in education or even if it's enterprise, it doesn't matter. Most of that spending and most of those commitments happen this time of year. You spend the first kind of months of the year strategizing for the year, prepping and planning for certain things, resource allocation, and so on. And then you really get into, okay, now we're going to perform these projects. And one of the things that I've learned over the 4 years that I've been doing this is that, one, not everybody does things the same. So from an outsource perspective, we have to offer up a sense of flexibility and what we ask for and what we require to a degree. But also, more importantly, we have to make sure that we have the details necessary to perform the project the way that it's supposed to be performed to ensure good outcomes. And there's actually multiple various reasons for that. And I know we can topically go into each one of those, right? Accuracy of the project, creating efficiencies within the project on site, making sure that we have a sense of quality control, make sure that we're mitigating risk. One thing that's often not talked about, but we understand it a lot, is make sure that we are in it from a compliance perspective. And by compliance, I mean, okay, if we're having to follow certain OSHA regulations, right? The size of display determines how many people need to be on site, right? Whether it's one person, two people, three people. There's all those variables that go into place as well. And having and ascertaining that information up front helps us prepare for that. So there's a compliance piece of it. I think another thing too that we really want to make sure that we concentrate on is the professionalism aspect. We're operating on behalf of our customers. So we want to make sure that we aren't tarnishing reputations by not having the information available and kind of fumbling over ourselves when we go to site. But ultimately, the most important piece is client satisfaction. And this may be contrary to the way our business works. We partner with integrators. That's who we exchange ideas and dollars with. But when I say client satisfaction, I mean the person using the system ultimately. So the end user, the people are actually operating that system. So there's a bunch of variables in there is why detail is necessary, prepping and planning is necessary for these projects. And of course, we'll get into some anecdotes as far as those things go. And then just what some of the expectations from an outsource perspective will help our customers better perform with us when they're engaging with us on projects.
Yeah, I'm. So I have this conversation with customers, daily, and sometimes it's people who have never outsourced any part of the business before at all, and they're trying to figure out how it works, or people who have outsourced, maybe they outsource all of their installs, or they outsource a lot of pieces of their process to us. So they always ask questions like, "Oh, how do you guys do it? What's your guys' way of doing things?" And I always kind of have to tell them that it doesn't matter how we do it. Like we aren't what matters. You're what matters. We are here to try and represent a project the way that you would do it yourself. Like our desired outcome would be that, essentially the end user would probably not even know that we did it, that they would think that, oh, this is great that my customer or my integrator who I hired to do this job, this is a great install, and that they don't, even have to worry about, oh, these subcontractors came in here. Like we want to represent our customers as well as they would represent themselves. So we, to that point, I think, try really hard to understand how do you do things? What does an install look like for you so that we can do our best to replicate that so that the customers feel like they're getting the same kind of quality outcome.
Yeah. And what's interesting about what you just said too, is that it just goes to show you that there are really no industry standards and best practices for how you perform this type of work. Every single integrator has their own unique way of doing things. So we have to operate in almost a chameleon manner. Like whatever this integrator wants and desires is going to be vastly different from the other one. And we have to be able to be accountable for those expectations, but we need to understand them up front. We can absolutely perform on behalf the way that their desire is, but we need to have all the details in order to do that. What is your expectation for when we go to site? And that prioritizes the importance of making sure that we're collecting as much detail as possible up front so we know we can execute on those things appropriately.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about really is the scope of work, right? It's not just the scope of work that you give to the end user, like what's being done, what is the project, but if we are being involved in a subcontracting capacity, like what is our scope and what is your scope and where does it meet in the middle? Are we just going on site to help hang displays and you're going to be handling wiring up the sound system and the DSPs, or are we going to be doing everything and you're coming in and commissioning at the end? Like where's the line drawn? And I think if that's not clearly defined, then that's where you run into some headaches.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is to eliminate as much ambiguity when you go to site as possible, right? Eliminating that gray area or having to create assumptions. I mean, everybody knows the saying around assumptions. I won't repeat it on here, but the reality is if we don't have that information, we're going into site going, okay, well, we think this is probably what we need to do without the detail given to us. The problem is that I've often seen if you're playing that guess game, you're going to be wrong. Positioning in terms of the display or height on a ceiling, positioning of certain audio equipment within a room. There's all kinds of things that if we don't understand what is needed up front and you play that guess game, you can guess wrong. And again, that goes back to many things that I kind of set up front in terms of like, here's the bullet point things, the quality aspect, right? Ultimately, as it ties to client satisfaction ultimately. So the elevated importance of making sure that we have the correct details up front is paramount to the success of the project. And I know you and I had talked about a couple examples, and this is one that just comes to my head. We had a client reach out for something that is, surface level, very simple. 86-inch display on a cart, 200 different rooms. So it's really rinse and repeat. And the limited scope that we were given was, we need you to put the displays on the cart. That was the scope. And then all of a sudden, all these questions come up. What about this? What about this? What is power in place? Is data in place? How are these going to be configured? So on and so forth. So there's all these other things that I'm thinking in my head that I'm going to have to ask these questions. And one of the things that I didn't even think about at first until there's the realization that we're talking 200 rooms, which wasn't in the initial scope of work, you and I discussed this yesterday. What do you do with all that garbage? That's a lot of waste that has to be disposed of on a site that probably doesn't have the containers to hold that much. Because really, if you're talking about a cart and you're talking about a display at 86-inch, that's a lot of waste. That's a lot of breakdown of waste. That's 200 times 2. So you're talking 400 different components, boxes that need to be broken down and disposed of. We don't know what to do with those. It's not in the initial scope. So what do we do?
That's just panels. It's not counting the carp cup. Probably comes in an equally big box with styrofoam and straps and stuff.
Yeah. Yep. So you have all that waste that you have to consider as well in such a large, highly coordinated project like that, when you're really kind of going and executing from room to room. And those things weren't clarified up front. Luckily, able to kind of ask those questions because we've been doing this long enough. We understand like, hey, there's certain things that we think of, certain triggers in the project that allow us to figure out and ask those questions. But that was just an example of working with an integrator up front where that information wasn't clearly defined. And it's something that's very important to the project, because the last thing that you want to do is leave a bunch of cardboard in a room and go, well, our job here is done. And then the end user goes, whoa, 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 whoa. Who's taking out the trash? So yeah, that it highlights the importance. It's not even an exaggerated example. It is just to the degree of that it's so many rooms, but it really shows the importance of making sure that we have that information.
The other thing, by getting that ironed out up front, you're also avoiding what everyone doesn't want to have happen, which is change orders, right? Because now if we get on site and it turns out that they were expecting us, or we just no one thought about the trash, and now we have to take the trash out. Right. Well, now we're going to have to pay an extra couple techs for an extra couple days to break down and relocate and throw a bunch of stuff in the trash. And that's a change order to the dealer, which is bad outcomes, a change order to the end user, which is a bad outcome. And they may be looking at our customer and saying, why wasn't this planned for? Why do you guys do that? Right. So, it's obviously not what we want to do.
Yeah, the devil's in the details for sure. And I know, especially when you get to this time of year, and this is why it's really appropriate for this conversation, is that, and this is not meant disrespectfully, but there are customers, when you get so overwhelmed with the number of projects that you have to perform and you have new projects coming in and you've got to allocate resources to them, sometimes it feels easier to create shortcuts. But kind of what I've said in the conversation you and I were having earlier, if shortcuts were the best way, they would just be called the way. That would just be the way to go. They wouldn't be called shortcuts. Shortcuts are always met with some sort of obstacle, challenge, or barrier that you have to get beyond.
Isn't that from Road Trip?
It is. Great movie reference, right?
I was like, I've heard that before somewhere.
It's a great movie reference, but it's true, right? Like that's why you don't create shortcuts. And I mean, ultimately, when you're talking about the success over many phases of a project, those details up front are what's going to ensure that you can jump from step to step, from phase to phase, efficiently and effectively, without having to go back and review work or have to go back and dismantle this thing and rewrite this thing. Having all that layered in up front is going to ensure that you're moving through those phases according to whatever roadmap you have for the project, and ultimately getting to satisfaction client sign off, which is where we want to be, right? That's ultimately where we want to go. So yeah, it's something over the years that I've been doing this, the Exertis Almo as a whole has been doing this, that we constantly are refining those processes to, again, be flexible as possible, but also making sure that we do have the best alignment with our customers and those expectations and setting them up front. So we know confidently we can go in and perform on their behalf and do so in a manner of which is going to keep those reputations intact and keep their customers coming back to them. I mean, that's ultimately what we want. That's our desire. And
you made a good point earlier about, you said no disrespect to certain customers, but like, and it's truly true. It is right, because a lot of customers, if they don't outsource a lot of labor, for example, they may write scopes of work that their field techs and their engineers that all fully understand, and the way that they write them, the way they put them together, kind of language or the verbiage, the layout of it, like there's a understood assumptions that exist within an organization. And when you bring in an outside party like us, we don't always have the same understanding of those assumptions or that tribal knowledge about how they do things. And so one thing could be written one way, and it could be taken, very literally, and like maybe something gets missed along the way. One thing that our guest from the last episode, Morgan Glandorf, told the story that I thought was really eye-opening, or I guess insightful. It was a college class that she was taking, and the professor was asking them to like explain how to, like, give them instructions on how to build a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And like as an example, and he had all the fixings for a PB&J like laid out on our table, and said, okay, well, how do I do how to make a PB&J? And Morgan or whoever in the class was responding, said, spread peanut butter on one slice of bread. So he got a slice of bread and sticks his hand in the jar, and he's smearing peanut butter with his hand all over the slice, and they're all like, "The hell are you doing?" He's like, You told me to spread it on the bread." And they're like, "No, you'll use a knife." He's like, "We didn't say to use a knife." And so like that's a very silly and kind of like rudimentary example, but it does kind of get to the point that we can't assume that, when you say to mount a TV on the wall, and maybe your standard is mounting it, I guess there's obviously industry standards for that kind of application, but like you may have a certain way that you like to manage the wire behind the display that we may not know about. And if you don't spell it out, we may wire it one way or label it a certain way, and then you get on site, and then your next tech doing service call can't find the right wire because we didn't know that we're supposed to run the cable a certain way and label a certain way, but that would have been understood. So those are the kind of things that, like, if they're not spelled out to us, that's where the mistakes can happen. So it's just why it's important.
Yeah, and I think it's equally important as well, because one of the things that I think about, and you're exactly right. We've worked with organizations before where they've even cited like, this is how we write them for our technicians. And I said, oh, and one of the questions I asked an organization, I think it was a couple of years ago, and I said, well, when you have someone new that comes in, how do you teach them? How do you teach a new tech? You're onboarding a new tech in your organization. And they said, well, we have a whole training manual that goes through on how to completely execute on the project. I said, so you only operate under those conditions and those training variables at the onset, but then things change over time. I said, that information that you have up front and being able to teach someone is something, one, that you should adhere to as an organization to make sure that you have all I's dotted and T's crossed when it comes to the project. But two, even most importantly, is that when you are outsourcing, there's no differentiation in terms of how you perform the work and the expectation set and how we're going to perform the work and having those expectations set. That's being thorough is just something you need to do as an organization to make sure that you have everything exactly how it's supposed to be, because also as an integrator is interfacing and communicating with us, they're also communicating and interfacing with their end user and using some of that same information to do so. So I think just as common practice, those are things that you want to do in your organization. Yes, they do take additional time, but that thoroughness is ultimately what's going to drive successful outcomes, which I will say a lot over this podcast over a very long period of time, because that's what it's all about.
I think if I could make a selfish plug about something that we, I think, do very well here, is that because we have such a good project management team who supports our installs, and because we partner with our customers as well as we do, we take those examples you mentioned of, an ambiguity about a scope, or maybe a learning exercise that we gain that knowledge, and we work with those customers again, and we learn how they do things, and we try to roll it out to our techs. So we use it as a chance to improve, because it really is. It's not just customers have to think about planning better, as we need to learn how to work with each of our customers in the way that they need to do their business, as I mentioned earlier. And I think we do a great job of that. And, we find those opportunities to improve our processes and make sure that we are setting the right expectations with our customers when we're quoting stuff out or we're going on site.
It's a great point. And it makes me think about the different types of projects that are delivered to us, not the different types of projects, but how projects are delivered to us as an organization, right? There's a very strategic approach to it. And then sometimes there's a reactive approach to it. I mean, oftentimes we are getting projects where customers just need us to get them out of a jam, right? Like, hey, there's extenuating circumstances, things have happened, and we really don't have a really good ability to interface with them appropriately when you're under such tight timelines and oftentimes other constraints. The best work that we do with certain integration organizations is when we have the ability to really sit down and hash those details out, right? What is your expectation? How do you like to perform the work? We get a chance to ask them questions. They get a chance to ask us questions. And then really through that process, we identify, can we do business together? Does it make sense? Sometimes it doesn't. It's just a reality. And this is not even with us. This is interfacing with any outsourced organization within our industry or other industries. Sometimes there isn't a good match because the expectations differ. Oftentimes, though, if we can identify those things in an upfront, candid, open conversation, we can do business together, and we can do it in a really, really profoundly good way for them and generate those outcomes that they're looking for. Again, what we don't want to do is we don't want to just be reactive in a way and say, hey, I'm here to help you out of this jam. We want to help our customers in any way possible, but we want to do so in a mindset of which isn't going to create issues as we move through projects, anticipated issues too, because oftentimes when we get those, hey, I need someone, it's Friday afternoon, this is a perfect time, right? It's Friday at 3:00. Can you give me someone to site anybody? Can they fog a mirror? Do they have, 10 fingers and 10 toes? I just need somebody who can breathe on site Monday. I go, absolutely not. Could I find someone? Probably. Do I absolutely know it's going to be a bad outcome? 100%, because I haven't had time to prep and plan for that job appropriately. Those are ones that we have to just politely decline. It's not that we don't want to help, but we also don't want to create bad circumstances for you and your customer either.
Yeah, I think I guess the counterpoint of that, the customers that I know that we have a lot of success with are those who are having, I guess, like growing pains or good problems, or that they're trying to get into a new geography, or they're trying to take on maybe a type of vertical market that they haven't typically gone into, and maybe they don't have the same kind of manpower, or they don't have the same kind of expertise, and they don't want to hire a whole new crew, right? But they still want to take on new business. And those guys come to us, well in advance. They're budgeting their installs with us. I mean, obviously we want our customers to be able to make money on our installs, right? We don't want to just be like a Band-Aid that's going over a problem. We want to be able to be part of the strategic planning of it, be part of the budgetary, and you marking that up, and just like you with your own labor, so the customers are able to make money on it as well.
Yep. I mean, that's the whole intention for what we do, is to be able to build that kind of conversation relationship in a way that is determining those things up front. Again, when you're kind of going through that hi, how are you, nice to meet you process, you're just like, if you're dating, you're asking those questions to understand the other party and to see, hey, is this going to be a good fit? Can we go on a second date together? Can we go on a third date together? I mean, this is like relationship 101. It's the same kind of relationship that we have to build with our clients. We just do it in a different way than the hardware segment does. Like, we do it in a different way. We have to ask different questions. We're interfacing with different people, but really at its core, that process is the same. Can we get an understanding of each other's commitment to this kind of work together so we can proceed forward? And the greatest examples that we have, I'm not going to name them on here, but the greatest examples we have are when we're able to interface with customers in that manner. Are the best customers that we work with, that we hope get a ton of value of what we do. We certainly get a ton of value from what they give to us, to be able to perform on their behalf. We've gone through that process from the very onset. And by the way, it doesn't just end there. You continue to go through that refinement process. You continue to get that feedback from the customer, because things do adjust and change from project to project. But as long as that communication conduit exists, we can pretty much guarantee that we're going to do right things right, and we're going to perform great on your behalf. So, and that's all. I mean, that's what we're here to do. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do. We're help to just augment, solve problems for customers, be a strategic component to their business. And really, that's, if you think about from an outsourcing perspective, this is what I always find unique about this industry. And I've talked about this many times in different panels that I've been on, and I'll share it again here. I remember having the conversation at Infocom, it was definitely pre-COVID, probably 1 or 2 years before COVID. And this was when we really kind of just brought installation services on board to Almo, but there wasn't a heavy strategic focus to it. We were really just kind of dipping our toes into it, and really at that time didn't know what we were doing. And one thing that was very apparent to me in my conversations with my customers at the time, because I was the director of Midwest sales at the time, I still had a customer base that I was dealing with, and I'm asking questions, just trying to understand from an outsourced perspective what our position really was. And for the most part, the majority of my customers answered with this: I don't outsource. I use my own crews. I'm not going to outsource. Why would I ever do that? Relinquish control? Are you crazy? But then when we think about the legitimacy to outsourcing, both in geographical expansion or not having to ramp up so quickly resource expectations, and then oftentimes when things like COVID impact to the adverse of that, where you're having to make decisions on, I don't have work, what am I going to do with these folks, right? It's really kind of mitigating the resource risk as well. There's a whole slew of reasons why you would want to outsource in your organization, not as the primary, but even if it's overflow, it's supplemental, as you said, John, specialty. That's a big thing for us now, is like, we have specialty in certain things where maybe our customers don't. It's like, yeah, you want to dip your toes in this thing, we can help you do that. And really what I've noticed over that period of time is that mindset has changed. So really where you go from the taboo nature of outsourcing as a whole to, I want to understand it, I want to do it, but really don't know how the process works yet. It's been refined to a degree where now, I don't want to say there's a full understanding, but certainly I think our customers are more committed in a way now that they're confident and comfortable with outsourcing, because they've really worked it into the strategy of their business. No different than like someone like a Google. Think about a Google. Google outsources over 70% of its capabilities. And most people don't know that. They have to. That's how they grow and expand as an organization. It's such a critical component of what they do. And they've done it successfully because they've really worked it in the strategy of the business.
I think, to your point, a big trend that I'm seeing right now specifically is around like direct VLED walls, right? So a lot of it's the newer hot technology I was talking about. In a lot of cases, replacing what may have been typically a projection screen in the past. And there's integrators who can hang a projection screen and mount a projector and do all the math to get the right screen calculation, have it look fantastic. And now they're being asked to put a video screen up, and it's a different kind of expertise, and sometimes it requires like certain certifications from the manufacturer that take time and money and energy to go get. And if you're only doing one wall, is worth putting all the time into it. And so being able to come to us, who we have the certifications to do most of the major manufacturers, we have the right techs and the right locations to do it, that you're able to take on those kind of projects with kind of some comfort. And so it almost becomes, in a strange way, almost like imperative in certain cases to be willing to outsource, because it could be much more time consuming and costly to try and do that yourself.
100%. And one of the things even layered on top of that, and this is really what I like about our strategy with some of the things, and I'm speaking to direct VLED specifically, is that we're building out a program currently internally to where, yeah, we can support it from an installation and commissioning perspective. You can choose to be there or not be there. But one of the things that we can do, it's not that we want to harbor all this business for us forever. We want it to be a value to our customers. We can also train the trainer. You can bring your technicians to site and we can really show them, here's how you install it. We can provide oversight. Here's how you commission the system. So next time your technicians are confident and comfortable going and doing it themselves. Again, it's not one of these things where it's just like, give us all the business and never do it yourself. It's like, no, you can take the opportunity to learn and explore, but you can do so without the pressures of not knowing up front. You can really align with us and our capabilities to do that comfortably on site. And you can do that as many times as you want. You know, if we're coming out and providing oversight and commissioning, we can continue doing those things until your crew is comfortable doing them on their own. I mean, I think that's such a great thing that we can give back to customers, so they can learn and understand this technology and move forward with it again in a confident way.
I mean, it's a small thing, but like if you ever seen like a bunch of boxes of direct LED panels show up to a job site, it's packaged in a way that's totally different than how you'd package the display. And so if you have newly learning people who are learning, I mean, just being on site and watch them unbox stuff and organize all the modules and all the chassis and like mounts and have it all like lined out like that, you could learn a ton just in how they're setting up the job 100%. Site just by watching.
Yep. So, and by the way, from manufacturer to manufacturer, that process differs, right? There is no, I mean, I think we said this on the first episode, there's no standardization when it comes to direct LED. You know, every manufacturer is doing and they're designing systems in their own unique way, whether or not it's limited technology or say, hey, from an engineering perspective, this is what's going to work best with our chassis, or this is the mounting system that we know that we can build that's going to support our systems. And those systems, there are subtle variances between one and another. Ultimately, the technology is the same, but there are those subtle nuances from system to system that you have to understand to make sure that you're deploying a successful project. So part of it is not just us doing, but part of it is their ability to be educated as well. And I think it's equally as important, if not more important.
Yeah. Again, I think our mission statement or our value add or whatever is we're trying to partner with our customers. We're trying to help them grow their business. It's not just, like you said earlier, we're not trying to take all those installs and trying to like hoard all this revenue. We're trying to help our customer. I mean, we are a very, very small piece of the business that we do with selling hardware to our customers. We're just here to help them be successful.
Yeah,
so.
that's exactly it. And whatever manner that we can do that. And I think it's our podcast. We say whatever we want. Toot the horn of what we've done in our organization is everything we've built around. And I've told people this before is like I don't have a crystal ball. You don't have a crystal ball. None of us have a crystal ball in front of us, right? We're not necessarily always just anticipating a needs. Oftentimes we can, but we're doing that based on feedback, either within our customer base or the industry dynamics and technology dynamics as a whole. We're adjusting to those things. But we really build out our program when customers come to us in this choir of voices and say, it would be really nice if you guys had this thing so we could utilize this, or could you help with this? Most of what we've created and generated is just due to customers saying, hey, I need help here and I need help in this manner. Can you help? And sometimes the answer is not now, but I probably could in the future. Let me design a program around that. And that's really what we've done.
And we've done a great job.
I think we've done a pretty good job.
Okay. I only have one more, I guess, important question for you. I think as we wrap it up here is: do you have any big plans for Cinco de Milko this weekend?
Yeah, I was going to make a wide array of milkaritas, and so that's on the horizon, which I'm very excited about. Sunday, officially Cinco de Mayo. We have hockey on Sunday.
Yeah, as we record this, it'll be well past Cinco. It'll be like Memorial Day.
By the time this comes out, I'll be so many margaritas deep by the time this episode comes out. But we play hockey at noon on Sunday. So I don't know what the rest of the day looks like, but it will be margarita filled. I know that for sure because I will officially throttle back from bourbon over the next 2 days, and will officially throttle up into tequila for the remainder of the summer into the fall. So that's just kind of what I live by. My neighbors
are all like gin guys.
Ew.
Like they all like their drink is all gin. So like we go to the pool and it's all gin and tonics. No, they're all like.
You live in a nursing home? Gin and tonic. Gross.
They're having a slow gin fizz.
Oh god, gin is just. There's an Empress. I think it's called Empress Gin. Is pretty good. And then Hendrix is. I can stomach Hendrix for sure, but the rest of it just tastes like pine needles. It's disgusting. It's very gross. Dude, this was a very fun episode. I hope this is very insightful for people. I hope you liked Milky Minute. But yeah, I mean, this is.
The fans asked for it, to be clear. We didn't want to do the Milky Minute. The Milky Minute was demanded by the
sometimes you've got to give the audience what they're asking for.
We're just a vessel to people, Cory. We're just here to give
literally exactly what we're here for. But yeah, I mean, obviously, intentionally, we hope this was insightful for everybody. I think the content around this is really good timing as we work our way into what is normally the busiest season of the year for everybody, most of our integrator partners. And of course, if you want more of this content, there's other podcasts available as well through the Exertis Almo network. You can hit us up on YouTube. So I think you just look up Exertis Almo on YouTube and you'll see those on there. And then all major podcast platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, there's some other ones, Stitcher, Anchor. I'm trying to remember, Podomatic. I don't even know what the library extends to anymore, but it's out there.
And obviously, you can find both you and I on LinkedIn. If you're interested in any of our services, you want to have any questions, you want to know more, reach out to us. You can find our information on the Exertis Almo website. There's a services page that has our pictures on there and how to get a hold of us. So we're available to. You can tell us if we're wrong about how we're doing things. You can tell us if you want to know more. You can tell us if you think we are too milky. Whatever you want to tell us. To be clear,
if you tell us we're wrong, we're just going to ignore you. So yeah, appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the next one. And see y'all next time.